Sexton trying to get loose. He'll fire. He knocks it down. Toro slammed it home. Garland upstairs. Oh! Sexton inside. A thunderous dunk. And Allen blocked the shot at the rim.
Down podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Cleveland Cavaliers have done it again. They have gone 3-0 so far this week, beating the Toronto Raptors at the buzzer after coming off a close win against the Portland Trailblazers. Before we get into that, support from this podcast and this following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects, and connecting with me now on Zoom is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. What a fun win last night. I mean, one of those that, you know, I mean, it was like 5 minutes into the game, and I was DMing you like, this isn't a win. They're not winning this game. Yeah. You know, and all the reasons me and you both thought the Raptors probably had their number in this one were coming to bear. They were killing us on the offensive boards. They were creating deflections. They were blocking shots left and right with their crazy length, you know, pretty much across all 5 positions. And somehow the Cavs just hung around, and then won, which was like, I still am not quite sure what the hell happened here, but it was really, really, really fun.
Darius Garland happened, man. Darius Garland turned into Mr. Fourth Quarter against the Toronto Raptors. And you're right. Like when we were previewing this week, we said these are 4 could-win games, right? Like we didn't know how many the Cavs would actually go out and get. But winning against Charlotte on the road, beating Portland at home, beating Toronto, those are all quality wins. And the reason I identified this Toronto game as one that I wasn't particularly comfortable with going in was, as you mentioned, the fact that they are the best team in the league when it comes to generating offensive rebounds. Yes, their bigs are a little undersized, but they have 6'9" guys that are playing at the shooting guard and wing positions, and those guys crash the glass. They generate more steals than any team in the league. They generate deflections at a high rate. The new defensive rules, the way that the game is called, really benefits Toronto because they play an incredibly physical style where you are just getting beat up all game long. You have to really compete. And when the Cavs started making that comeback, coming down from, I believe they were down 15, and making a game of it again, I was already happy with that. Like that was a team that looked tired out there. You could tell that Toronto was getting to them. Toronto is a team that's uniquely built to attack the weak points in this roster, and the Cavs just continue to show resiliency, right? Like a toughness that you wouldn't normally associate with the team this young, and it was really unbelievable that they hung around, and then in the end, Darius Garland was able to ice it with a couple free throws.
We were talking before the game about how some Raptors fans were unhappy with the officiating at the end, which is just so funny because, I mean, every possession is bumps and riding dudes and pulling their jerseys as they try to come off of screens. And, you know, like they were, I mean, and all credit to them, they're a really, really great defensive team and really great, especially in transition on offense. Obviously, the half court is where the Cavs won this game, which was the kind of the way we always thought it was going to be. It was like, if they're going to win, they're going to need to kind of keep the game slow and get their defense set, because Toronto doesn't do good against set defenses that don't feature Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. So, you know, I thought that was their road to the win, and despite, you know, still turning the ball, and there was a reason why it was so close and why they nearly lost. You know, they weren't perfect at it, but they just hung around enough, and then some shot making and some timely decisions kind of iced it for him.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 games, Portland and Toronto have had like 15 plus more shots than the Cavs, right? Like they are rebounding teams, or they're getting out rebounded. They are still turning the ball over less recently during this winning streak, but you're still kind of getting those pick sixes. And Toronto is a team that is very capable of generating those pick sixes. And the bottom line is, I think we should circle back to this. I was very wrong about the Toronto Raptors. They are a much much better team than I expected. OG Anunoby has made the leap. Scotty Barnes, similar to Mobley, is ahead of where I thought he would be this early in the season. Gary Trent Jr. has gone from being horrific defensively with the Raptors last year to being a very good defender. Like, you could tell he bothered the hell out of Colin Sexton. He's one of the league leaders in steals. I think he's almost getting almost 3 a game.
Maybe he needs to work on his jump ball game next.
Yeah, no kidding. Losing jump balls to Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, even Kem Birch said that Gary Trent Jr., he's never seen anything like it for someone to go from horrible to great defensively. And especially after having a really bad preseason as well. I don't think anyone really saw this coming. And then Toronto also did what they tend to do, which is find diamonds in the rough. Delano Banton is one of the way back
boys.
One of the way back boys. I saw someone else compare him to Milli Vanilli. That also tickled my fancy. But yeah, I mean, it's not exactly surprising that the second coming of Sean Livingston would play well against the Cavs.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like, they are just an incredibly deep team. They have length at every single position. They play hard. They're really well coached. And I was flat out wrong about them. They're going to be getting Pascal Siakam back tomorrow, it sounds like. That is not a team that is going to be a pushover on any given night.
No, they were very, very good. And, like, it's funny because, you look at this Cavs schedule and you're starting to see some of the, like, obviously it's a terribly tough schedule, but then you're starting to see some softer spots here and there. Yeah. Like, the Clippers aren't as good as we thought they were going to be. And, it seems like the Hornets are coming back to earth just a little bit.
Yep.
Portland
my
isn't
Cavs over Hornets prediction still looking it's starting to look a little better.
Like, Portland has been pretty up and down, but then the games that we thought were going to be the easy ones, Toronto, we thought New York was going to backslide. That hasn't happened. So it's like,
yep.
Even when the hardest stuff seems a little easier in hindsight, the easier stuff seems harder in hindsight. So, like, the hits just keep coming for this team, and they keep kind of meeting the moment. And it's just been really, really fun to see. I mean, I don't feel like anyone... I think only Ricky, Cedi, and Jarrett played well in the first half. And somehow they're down 9, Like, and with every other member of the team playing the way they did up to that point, it's just... Man, can we talk about Cedi for a minute?
I think we probably should.
I mean, this guy, was not the primary point of derision for this fan base, but, like, I would say the easiest punching bag.
Yeah.
And we took our shots too last year where we were really frustrated and the play wasn't good. And I mean, I think we were a little easier on him because we were like, they don't have any options a lot of the time because they were so beat up. But, like, we certainly were not expecting this. I mean, and you look at the way he's playing, and it's just he's completely changed his shot profile.
Yeah.
I tweeted this out today. He's shooting less than 2 attempts a game from 2-point range, and 1.7, I believe, is what he's shooting inside the arc per game, and he's shooting 5.3 threes.
And those shots from 2 have to be coming from the rim, right?
Well, they're transition buckets. I'm 99% sure because he still runs the floor really, really hard, and fills those lanes hard, and I'm fine with him taking those shots. And I think that shot profile is it's indicative that he's really worked on his jumper.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to shoot 50% all season. If he stays above 40, I'll be pretty stunned because only really, really good shooters shoot 40% on 5 attempts a game, especially in only 18 minutes, by the way. That's he's 10 points.
That's a good point.
10.6
he's getting
attempts
them up when he's out there, that's for sure.
10.6 attempts per 36 minutes for Cedi. I don't expect him to stay at that number, but, like, I think it reflects that he's clearly worked on the shot and he's very confident in it, and it's also a reflection of the talent level on the roster that says, Cedi, all we need you to be is this. We need you to be a spot up 3-point shooter, come off curls and fill spaces and relocate and get into gaps when help is on other people, and we need to run really hard in transition, and that's it. I mean, I would venture to say he's running
best chase down blocker on the team.
Yeah, second best in Cavs history as far as I'm concerned. And I just think you look at this guy and he just the game has been simplified for him, which is really what we thought he was supposed to be. Like think about rookie year Cedi. We were like, oh, this guy's going to be our energy guy. He's going to be like a 3-and-D guy. He's going to be a shooter. We weren't thinking he was going to run 15 pick and rolls a game.
Yeah.
The roster construction and injuries kind of forced him into that role, but he's probably running 1 or 2 pick and rolls a game tops at this point, and that feels about right.
Yeah, and this is the benefit of having kind of cornerstone guys and clearly defined roles, right? Like, it becomes a whole lot easier to evaluate role players. We talked about on the last podcast some of the other factors where maybe he didn't come into it the season in as good of shape. He was adjusting to a new role, right? Like, there was so much that went into last year with it being such a weird season, but the way that he has stepped up, I mean, it's probably added a couple wins to the Cavs this season already. Like, him and Ricky Rubio in particular have been really, really crucial role players. And you look at the last 2 games here, this was not a team that has great depth. You're missing 3 of your top 8 guys, and you have guys filling in like Cedi Osman now. Like, I think you can say pretty confidently, like, this should be a permanent feature in the Cavs rotation. Like, I don't think you can go to 8, right? Like, I think at the very least you go to 9. And then it's also nice to see other guys step up. Like, I didn't think Dean Wade was particularly good against Portland, but I thought he had a really good game against the Raptors. Like, he made some really, really intelligent plays. He plays hard. He moves his feet on defense. He lost Noah Powell a few times against Portland, but I really thought that he had a good game against Toronto.
I felt like this team is a lot easier for him to match up against. Yes. and it showed. I mean, he had, 8 and 5 is fine. If he hit 1 or 2 of his threes, he ended up going 0-4. If he hit one of those, he goes from having a pretty good game to a pretty great game, So
yep.
No real complaints with Dean. I still don't really like the rotation choice of starting him, if I'm being completely honest. But I also thought, and I was glad. Well, here's my question to you about because they did extend the rotation to 9 in this game. Lamar Stevens played 10 minutes, which is actually all you need. Like everyone, like Mobley still played 38, Allen played 39. That's still too many, and like you want to find some spots to steal elsewhere. But that's really a byproduct of him. I think the choice to start Wade at the 3. Like, if Wade's your backup 4, I think you can steal a few minutes elsewhere for those guys. But that aside, do you think that is kind of portends a 9-man rotation going forward? Or do you think, because I texted you again when we were very sure they were not winning this game, I said to you, like, I think JB knows it too, because he's bringing in Lamar to save these guys' legs. Like, do you think that he's going to stick with this 9-man? Or do you think that was more, he was kind of just reading the room and they just kind of needed an infusion of energy? And, I mean, obviously I had the most pessimistic reading at the time, but what do you think?
I do think it's likely to stick with 9, just for the simple fact of when this team is fully healthy. If you weren't going with a 9-man rotation, that means Cedi Osman isn't playing at all. Like, because once Okoro, Love, and Laurie are back in the lineup, that brings you to 8 plus the starters.
I don't think he was ever going to stay with just 8.
No, I don't think so either. Like,
but I mean, even for this remainder of this stretch, while they're down, I think he's got to keep giving Lamar the 10 minutes a game. I know Lamar has had a really rough start to the year, but like, you just need to survive those minutes, And
I don't know if you need to if Okoro's back. Like, if Okoro comes back,
I said during this stretch while they are down those 3 guys, once Okoro's back, then you just stick at 9 and maybe give Windler some run on the back end as well. And Chris Fedor's reporting does make it sound like there's a possibility that Okoro could be back against the Knicks. If not, Wednesday against the Wizards would probably be the likely return date. They actually get 2 days off, which is great. Finally, a little bit of rest for this team that desperately needs it. But I definitely think you go with the 9-man. You don't want to wear guys down. Would you go to 10 once the team's all the way healthy?
Matchup dependent. I think you would look at how some of the role players are playing, and I still think you want to get Dylan Windler some minutes. Like, I think you want to find ways to at least give him opportunities to earn some minutes, especially if you have a bit of a lead, go a little deeper in the bench and try to give guys opportunities to earn minutes and to earn confidence from the coaching staff, right? Because, I mean, as I said, Dean Wade wasn't playing particularly well against Portland, but you give him a little more burn. He gets a little more comfortable playing at game speed and can be a valuable contributor. And I do think that they have role guys that can be helpful. Like Lamar Stevens had stretches last season where he was really helpful. I think he made a difference in the comeback against Toronto. He played really good defense, and as a team, actually, I felt the Cavs played really good defense. There were a couple times where Sexton lost Van Vliet as well as Gary Trent Jr.
Sexton was like it. I thought that was one of Sexton's like highest ceiling, lowest floor defensive games I've seen in a while, because he was blowing up some Fred Van Vliet pick and rolls. He was getting really, it was clear he was really dedicating himself to getting skinny on the pick and rolls and ducking through and working really hard.
His defense was really impactful.
He regained contact really well. I was really, really proud of the way he was navigating screens. Obviously proud of, whatever. I'm proud of him. Yeah. Screw it. I was proud of the way he was doing that. And then off ball, man. Ooh, he was space cadetting hard. I almost wonder if he was so focused on the on ball that he was like, and then,
it probably reminded you of your beloved Dallas Cowboys with Trevon Diggs. So like it was a lot of feast or famine with him on the defensive end.
There's no famine with him. And like in that narrative is so dumb.
I don't watch enough to actually know. I just know that that's the narrative.
That's the narrative, and it's so dumb. He just baits quarterbacks into targets. So sometimes dudes make catches because it's the NFL, but like he also baits them into targets and gets a ton of interceptions. So shut up.
Fair enough. But yeah,
I
think you're right.
I thought Sexton was not sharp off the ball defensively. I think there was a play. I know you know what I'm talking about. The play where Gary Trent backdoor cut him and then just was under the basket for about 5 seconds. And I'm not exaggerating.
Whoever the Toronto ball handler was, like they did not have the vision because Gary Trent was standing there under the rim. And then there was the Van Vliet one that I noticed where he kind of left him in the corner to provide some help. And Fred was just standing there wide open for about 6 seconds as well. So I do think, and that's the nice thing with Sexton this season is.
I think we need to, because that, man, people are just like, they have such an axe to grind.
Yeah, I mean,
find
there's
it really
emotional
tiring.
baggage there, like there was with Love and Cedi. Like we know that there is that with Colin Sexton, and
like this guy can't. I think Mac Perry of the It's Cavalier podcast tweeted something like, "Man is the only guy who really can't get away with a bad game, no matter what the outcome is." You know, like I just like he had a bad game on offense. I thought defensively he competed pretty well. But and
he still drew a lot of attention defensively, like from Toronto, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he had a bad offensive game. Like I think we can call a spade there. The jumper was not going. The touch wasn't there for the most part. But man, like if there's anything worth feeling great about, it's like the Cavs, like that. Those kind of games tank you in the past with this team.
Well, especially when you're down 3 of your top 8 guys, right? Like you were in that situation against Portland and against Toronto. Against Portland, Evan Mobley had his worst game of the season. Colin Sexton probably had his worst offensive game of the season against Toronto. You can tell he's bothered by lengthy defenders this season now that they're able to be a little more physical. We saw that with Mikal Bridges. We've seen him have these off nights against defenders like Gary Trent Jr. But I do think that it's a positive that he can still go out there and impact the game in other ways. Like he was not capable of having a positive impact on a game in nights where his shot wasn't falling in the past, right?
And Devin Posey in our chat said something along the lines of he almost lost the game, and like, well, I guess so, but also he got clipped the same way Darius got clipped to end the game. The only difference is Darius got a call.
Yeah, the first one was the jump ball call, which was weird because it was never actually wrapped up. I saw Kevin Love tweeted about that. That wasn't great. The second time I thought he got clipped in the same way as Garland. We're lucky it bounced out to him. I thought it was a mistake to go to Sexton in those situations.
Agreed.
I know he's been clutch in the past, but with the success that Garland had been having with those high pick and rolls all night, generating shots for both himself and others, plus knowing the way that Gary Trent Jr. had been defending him, I thought it was very fortunate that play got blown up, the second one, and it went out to Garland because I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better in this situation. But yeah, like he was kind of going kind of head first into guys tonight, or last night, I should say. And that's not what you want to see from Sexton, but I do think that it overall is a positive. And I know a lot's been made of kind of the dip in his production. He still is leading the team in usage rate by a considerable margin. It's at 26.4, which is exactly the same as it was in 1920, where he was featured prominently offensively. He's just not scoring well, right? Like the 3-point shot isn't there. We've seen this to start seasons before. 1920, I noted that in the first 33 games, he shot 27% from three. And then as soon as the calendar hit 2020, January 1st, he went 4-7 from three and shot 45% from three the rest of the season. Like, we have seen him go through these lulls, and we've seen him go through these lulls when he's adjusting to a new role before. So it's not like this is uncharted territory for him, but I do think it's a positive that he's getting his shots in different ways. You don't need to give him as many touches when he's out there, but he's really drawing a lot of defensive attention with the cuts that he's making. And you would assume, when we're looking at things that are sustainable and unsustainable for the Cavs, you would expect that his 3-point shooting is going to come up. Like, you are going to expect him to be a better offensive player as the season progresses, because he's too talented not to, and he's overcome these slow starts before.
Yeah, and like, especially since like we're getting to kind of see it like we've seen it in glimpses when he's kind of got his touch on his side, which has been few and far in between this season for Colin. But like, I mean, Chris Manning has talked about this on Locked On Cavs a few times. I'm just ripping from every other podcaster on the Cavs. That's this whole episode. But Manning talked about the fact that this was the first time, that Portland game was the first time in Colin's career he hit 20 points with 13 or less field goals.
Yeah.
Like you see, and that's why I'm not worried about it, is that like the proof of concept is there. You know what I mean? I'm seeing it, not every game with him, but I'm seeing it enough where I go, okay, I see what this role is going to be for you on like once everything gets figured out, and as you get more comfortable. And I like in this field, I think it is. I think we're good.
Okay.
Chat, tell us if we're good. Sorry, I had an internet drop here.
You know what? It happens.
I think we're good. I think we're good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I was going to say, like, it's in those instances where Colin Sexton doesn't have it going, you can close with Rubio. You can close with Isaac Okoro once he's back and healthy, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways to go. I do think that the process has been sound, but this is like, in the past, it was stats without winning, right? And that was the big criticism. I don't think it was necessarily fair to put that all on Colin Sexton, but the fact that he is adjusting his game, and you're seeing positive benefits from a team standpoint here, I think it's admirable. Like, he's still getting a lot of usage. It's not like when he's out there he's being ignored. It's right around that career average. He's still getting his opportunities. Those shots are just going to fall, but the reality is they're not as reliant on him in the past as they have been.
Which is what we always wanted. We wanted an egalitarian offense. And that's what we got. The Cavs have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and basically 8, with Kevin Love at 9.9 players averaging double figures so far this season. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that is the dream, man. I think that especially with a roster like this, there's just not enough individual talent to have someone putting up 30.
Yeah,
like and
that's reality.
And that's okay, especially where this team is in the rebuild. So, like, I'm fine with Colin's usage where it is. And by the way, if he's just hitting his shots at a normal rate, you can add 2 or 3 points per game to his average, and he's back up to 20.
Yep.
So, like, I just don't understand the consternation with him. Like, I get that it stinks that he's slumping from 3, but like overall, it's hard for me to like just be like when I'm watching a player like that, and mostly the problem is that his shots aren't going in, it's just hard for me to worry about it much.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm pretty happy with the process with Sexton, and it's nice that we can survive games where he doesn't necessarily have it. It's nice to see Darius Garland stepping up. Carter, I know we like to stay in our lanes and whatnot, but are you at all worried about both the knees for Allen and Garland? like their knees.
What?
Well, after making the leap, I was just worried if there'd be some swelling, if you had any concerns there. I don't want to play doctor, but
does anyone in the chat want to co-host this podcast with Justin? Because I think I'm out after that one. That was
Carter,
terrible. That was one of the worst. That was one of the worst things I've ever heard.
And Allen in this 3-game winning streak are awesome. Garland is averaging 18.7 and 7.3 assists on a 71 true shooting percentage. Allen is averaging 21 and 16 over those 3 games, shooting 68% from the floor. He has been absurd. I think Jared Allen is playing himself into some all-star consideration this season if the Cavs stay with this record. And I mean, it is just really, really impressive to see what he's done this season. They're keeping him involved offensively, and it's paying dividends. And Darius Garland is continuing to find that balance between his own offense and getting his teammates involved. It's getting better by the game. He's being more assertive. 12 points in the fourth quarter against Toronto, and as we said, winning the game. This is really, really big time stuff, and it feels like that leap is here, Carter.
I'm not there with Darius yet.
Ooh, baby.
Just from the perspective, I just want to see a little more aggressiveness. I want to see 18 become, 22, 23, 24 for his peaks, Like, I don't need him to average 30 points a game, but I do want to see him constantly putting pressure on the defense. And there's too many quarters right now where I'm not feeling Darius be that every play impact player.
I think
who
fair.
I do feel that from right now though is Jared Allen. This guy is he's just added so much to his game, and maybe it is a bit of a comfort level thing. Maybe it's just that touch with opportunity of playing with some truly elite point guards. But it's just he's just kind of all over the place. I mean, game-winning stops on two straight wins. I mean, finishing around the bucket. I mean, the Cavs still stink at rebounding, and it's going to be they're going to lose games because of it if they don't get better at it. But I would say he's very much cleaned up his individual effort. At least he's up to 15, 16 boards a game. Most of the time when they're giving up boards, it's not because of him, in my opinion. A lot of times he's coming over to help, and no one's boxing out his man. On the back end. So, I mean, it's just been so impressive to see him kind of take over. I mean, it's like 24 and 16 every night the last week or so. It's been really, really fun to see.
Yeah, and I think as a team they could definitely do a better job boxing out. I think even getting Isaac Okoro back, who I thought has been doing a better job rebounding this year. Like, you need your perimeter guys to get involved and really make a team effort of it, because that is absolutely one of the biggest Achilles heels for this team so far this season. Like, I know the turnovers get a lot of attention, but turnovers are up across the league. If you look at turnovers per game, the Cavs are they are, hang on, how many turnovers? They are the 6th worst when it comes to turnovers per game.
So it's fine, is what you're saying.
It's high, but it's not like everyone else is right around 1 or 2 turnovers.
Here's what I'll say. Why that is a worse stat than it is for most teams is because of how big they are. They can't get back in transition like other teams.
Yes.
So,
I totally agree.
It is damaging, but I kind of agree that the rebounding thing is. Well, actually, I don't know if I agree with that. As I think about it, because I think they've lost games because of the turnover avalanches. I don't know if they've lost games because of the offensive rebound problems.
You know why I said that? Because I filtered by turnovers, and I saw that the Cavs were 25th in turnovers, and I was like, you know what? They're actually not that bad. And then I realized that it was lowest per game to highest. So that was me misspeaking and trying to do something live. Which happens.
Well, that'll happen to you.
You hate to see it, but I definitely agree. It's too many pick sixes and live ball turnovers. I'm fine with some of them where they're trying to force feed guys on the inside. There's 1 or 2 turnovers a game where a guy's trying to get it to Mobley, and the lack of strength kind of comes through, and he bumbles the ball.
In the counter, you could always be the ISO Joe Hawks, who were always number 1 in turnover rate because nobody passed.
Yeah.
Like, this is a team that is
Even the 2017 Cavs, like they played a lot of isolation basketball and they kept the turnovers low because you could trust LeBron and Kyrie to execute in those situations, right?
yeah. But there's a reason they're not, like, when you're number 3 in assist rate, you're going to inherently be high in turnover rate. I mean, the Warriors that's always been their bugaboo that has caused them problems. I believe the Suns are pretty high up there as well. I mean, double check. Yeah, they're at least they're top 15 when you're looking at the other top assist teams in the league right now. So I don't know, man. I just I do think that stuff is going to come back to bite them. But again, like, it's just crazy that they're winning in games where it is biting them.
Yeah. Yeah, and getting these games, like, that was an absolute steal. Like, that game against Toronto was not a game that they should win. But, like, coming into this season, my prediction was 36 wins, right? Like, they need to go 30-42 the rest of the way to match that. Like, that is, like, that seems super manageable. And if they continue on this
which,
path,
by the way, I mean, just a reminder that I think their Vegas over-under was 26.5.
right. Like, I'm an optimist. This is what I do. And they seem to be exceeding those expectations. Like, they are going through their February of last year right now, and they're playing really well. They are missing guys and surviving it. This is a deeper team. And I think you do need to give credit to Kobe Altman for the roster construction. Like, even looking back at the Jared Allen trade, like, it's obvious what he is doing is making a big impact, but Taurean Prince was the tax on that deal, and they turned Taurean Prince into Ricky Rubio, who has added wins to this team this season and has been a big positive presence. Like, you look at Dean Wade, an undrafted guy that they developed. Lamar Stevens, same situation. Like, they have managed to find value in the margins. Cedi Osman is back to the player that you kind of were hoping he would be, and the proof of concept that we were talking about, those flashes. The flashes from Darius Garland's rookie year that had me really believing that he could be the player we're seeing right now. Like, all of those little flashes, all the glimpses that we got, that proof of concept is becoming more and more clear right now. And it's hard not to get excited, because when a team is this young and executing at this level, the pieces make sense together, and you still have all of your future picks. You have 2 second-round picks this year that look to be very valuable with the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs unprotected second-round picks. That's valuable as a trade chip. Like, this team is in a real position, if this continues, to take a look at how they're doing and see, hey, maybe we can help accelerate this, because we've done the organic parts. We've got those building blocks. We've put a foundation in place. We have a really good young core. And now you can get aggressive in supplementing that talent, because it looks like you have a franchise player in Evan Mobley. It looks like you have an offensive engine in Darius Garland. Colin Sexton, you expect him to play better. Lauri Markkanen's working well. Jared Allen is looking like a franchise center at 23 years old. Like, this is a really good position to be in.
Here's a question I have for you is, with this start, remember at the beginning of the season, we were like, let's go get Terrence Ross. Let's go get this guy. With how Cedi has been playing, with the flashes Dylan Windler's shown, knowing that Okoro is, still in the wings waiting to come back, is a move for a player like Terrence Ross, a plus wing that solves a need for the Cavs,
or Jeremy Lamb,
or Jeremy Lamb. Do you have less of an appetite for that kind of move now? Because I kind of do.
I would say less of an appetite if the price was right, if it's low enough where you're giving up a future second round pick or something along those lines. I still think I would have an interest in it. But with Kevin Love playing so well and being bought in, and Lauri working out at small forward, which I don't think is a long-term thing, but it's a product of having Love playing well. I do feel less of a sense of urgency. Cedi Osman's play has decrease that sense of urgency, and I think if I was able to play GM here, I think I'd be looking more at a larger splash, like a long-term guy that could work at the small forward position rather than those temporary fixes. But I mean, if you can get another plus wing, like there's you can never have too many wings in today's NBA. I mean, Toronto is a prime example of that. So if there is value to be found, if there's a guy on a team that doesn't have goals for this season and is just looking to offload somebody, I would certainly look to capitalize on that opportunity. But I definitely feel less of a sense of urgency because things are working out well in the toughest stretch of the season. And you would expect more internal growth as the season progresses.
That's the nice thing about this team. And we know growth isn't going to necessarily be linear, but for the most part, everyone's efforts should trend up. Like their feel, their understanding, this is a young team that's learning on the fly a lot.
Yeah.
So,
and just because the growth isn't linear, it's still likely going to be staggered, right? Like Colin Sexton is going through a bit of a slump right now. When he starts to come into his own, maybe Darius Garland is going to have a slump, or maybe Isaac Okoro comes into his own when other players are slump. If Evan Mobley hits a bit of a rookie wall, right? Like, so when you have that kind of depth, you can weather those storms. And there's still a lot of guys that feel like they could be playing better. Ricky Rubio, he has not been efficient, and we've seen him have efficient stretches, right? Like he's a little bit of a gambler out there, which is really fun to watch. But he can play better. Lauri Markkanen was starting to come into his own offensively. You hope there isn't too much of a lull, but he can play a whole lot better. Like there's a lot of easy paths to this team being a better team offensively than they've been so far, and a lot of it comes down to just hitting open shots. But to be 10 games into this season and for the Cavs to have a better offense than the Brooklyn Nets or the Denver Nuggets, that is wild. Like we would never have expected that, especially looking at the strength of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, how many games has Lauri Markkanen shot better than 50% from three so far this season?
I'd guess 2.
0.
Oh my goodness!
Only one. He's only gone 50% from three in one game. He went 2 of 4 against Phoenix. Everything else, it's been less than. And like a guy like that is someone who is a dude who gets really hot in bunches. Will hit 3-4 threes in a row, and that hasn't happened. So like you just keep looking at the things that kind of like should trend down on the Cavs, and there's just as many things that should trend up, and that's just really, really exciting.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it feels good because everyone knows I'm an optimist, right? Like that's just my disposition. I'm that way in almost every aspect of my life. And I just really felt that there was something here with this Cavs team. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm leading our listeners astray and whatnot. It is nice that what we thought we saw is kind of coming to fruition, right? Like it's a really, really exciting time to be a Cavs fan. I think they're starting to win over some non-believers. And I mean, there was probably more optimism about this team nationally than there was internally, right? Like if you look at Cavs Twitter and a lot of the beat, there was not a lot of high expectations. A lot of people taking the under on this season, and I felt like it was and I can't believe I'm bringing this number up again, but I felt they were a 27-win team last season if things didn't go wrong. And, they are on a really, really healthy pace to exceed even my high expectations for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you, to give you some credit, which I'm loath to do. But with that said, you were really smart because everyone was looking at this win total. They said they got even younger. They lost Larry Nance, and you said they didn't have Larry Nance last year. He played like 20 games.
Yeah, there was the first 17 games that he played, and then he hurt his hand, and he wasn't never that positive after that. Yeah.
And I thought that was a really, really wise kind of read of the situation. It's like you can't just look at the roster sheet from year over year and say, this is how it is, Yeah. And like we could have never guessed Mobley would be actively helpful his rookie year because almost no rookies are.
Yep.
So like that's the one where we just got to thank the basketball gods a little bit.
I thought Mobley could have a bigger impact than Nance on this season in the aggregate because I was like, he's probably not only going to play 30 games, and if he's at least like 70% of what Nance brought to the table over 72 games versus 30, that might have a positive impact if you're getting internal growth from other spots. But I think it's fair to say, and like all due respect to a friend of the podcast, Larry Nance Jr., I think Evan Mobley's just a flat out better basketball player at this point, which you would not expect from a young rookie. And there might be the rookie wall. There might be setbacks there, but
especially if he keeps playing 40 minutes a game.
Yes, I think he definitely need to manage those minutes, and we cannot. We need both Love and Laurie back to help facilitate that, I think. But it's a really, really great spot to be in, and I'm really excited to have Isaac Okoro come back, because you look at what this team has done defensively without their best point of attack defender, and just like the intelligence that he brings even on offense, kind of being a connecting piece, being a cutter. I feel like the growth that guys like Garland have shown in his time away from the team is really going to benefit him, because this team's getting more comfortable, and he's excels when he's not being asked to do too much, right? So if Garland's really coming into his own, and you kind of continue to see that usage go up with each passing game, I think that's really going to open up a lot of opportunities for Okoro, and he was doing a pretty good job of creating opportunities for himself early this season too.
Yeah, it's funny, I think that we were all disappointed to see him get benched. Even though it was an interesting decision to start Laurie, we all kind of wanted Isaac to just go out and win that job outright. But with that said, like, I really liked what we saw from him early in the season. The jumper wasn't really falling, but he was finding ways to impact the game as a cutter and defensively. I thought that Denver game, the one where he got hurt, I thought he was really, really good in that game. It's not like he scored a ton of points, but I think this team just is really thriving off of these kind of players who are, more than their box score contributions. And I think Isaac really fits into that mold. Now, the jumper is going to have to come. And I just want to get him, I want to see him get a chance to prove it, man. Like, how many 3-point attempts do you think he's put up this season so far?
Oh God, it's got to be under 10.
5,
because he only played 4 games, right? Yeah,
yep, 5. So yeah, and some of that is self-inflicted, in terms of like not.
Hey, another one goes in. He's a 40% 3-point shooter.
Yeah, no kidding. So I just want to see that volume go up. I want the coaching staff to empower him and test him. So much of 3-point shooting gravity is people being afraid you're actually going to shoot. Not whether it goes in or not. So,
oh God, look at Dylan Windler against Portland. Like, after he hit those threes, they were scrambling like he was Kyle Korver, right? Like, it's the threat of the shot, right? Like, you can, when you are active off ball and you are a threat to pull up and shoot every single time you catch the ball, guys are going to scramble. Like, even if you're not a proven shooter, they don't want to look like crap on the film study. So unless they are just choosing to abandon you, which hasn't been the case with Okoro, like I think that's going to generate opportunities. It's, man, I can't say enough about how excited I am about this team, because as much flack as I caught in 2018 for saying, you know what, I'm kind of ready for LeBron to move on. I want to build something organic and whatnot.
Just from me, really.
Yeah. Well, not just from you. I got the Menchie's got quite a few shots as well. A lot from Lakers Twitter as well, which I compared late career LeBron to having him on your team to nights in Vegas, where the first few nights are great, but by the end of it, your future savings are looking a little dwindled. You might be sore, you might be exhausted, but that's the experience. He had a great time those years that he was there. But this is the first time that this team has had a real identity outside of LeBron James, basically like since
2003, since I was 13 years old.
Yeah, in my adult life, like, this is the first time they have an identity. And, like, when we talked in the offseason about, they're really counting on internal growth, like, that is not a sexy thing to talk about. And in today's NBA, a lot of guys are giving up on, and you're looking for short fixes, and, we're going to bring in a veteran that's just going to bring this young team to the playoffs, and then we hope they learn along the way. That's not really what happened here. Like, you brought in Ricky Rubio that really helped. He's a great adult in the room. But this is really being propelled by that internal growth. Garland and Allen in particular in this recent stretch have been really tremendous. Getting a damn unicorn in Evan Mobley is a real big difference maker as well. But this team really has an identity, and it's who
we need to give some credit to on that front, though?
Who?
Our boy JB Bickerstaff.
Oh yeah,
I mean, like.
Absolutely.
It is, we've been picking some nits with JB the last couple of pods. We haven't liked the short rotations. Both of us, at least I was not and I remain not a fan of starting Dean Wade. But this is why coaching is more than it's more than, you know, playing 2K, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is building a culture. It is teaching.
Getting buy-in.
JB is in such a no-win spot, you know, from the perspective he's got the youngest team in the NBA, and management and ownership clearly want him to go win games.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to take a team that had very little track record of winning the last 3 years.
Very unconventional personnel.
Yeah, a weird roster, and make it work and get a team full of historical defensive liabilities to play good defense. I don't know if people understand what a miracle it is that the Cavs are 13th in defensive rating.
Yeah,
young teams don't
offensive rating. Like
young
both
teams,
of those is striking.
But defensively specifically, young teams starting 2 defensive liabilities that are 6-footers, 6'4" if you ask Justin, but 6-footers if you ask most of the basketball world, that are all 22 or 23 or younger, don't defend well.
Yep.
They just don't, especially when their backup center is Kevin Love. It's not like, you know, obviously they have Ricky coming off the bench, but the rest of the defensive, you know, they have Cedi and Kevin, like no great shakes defensively, personnel wise, coming off the bench. This is effort. It is discipline. It is listening to the coaching staff, and like you're really seeing buy-in. And you know where you really know is when you kind of like hear other vets and people who've been around the league, like Eddie Johnson, former great wing, who I think now is a Suns color commentator. Like tweet like JB got those guys cooking. Kendrick Perkins, I think, shouted out JB the other day. Like a lot of people who are around the league who know the guy and know kind of culture are like, yeah, that's JB. So, like, you know, as much as
our buddy Dave Dufour has credited him as a really good coach, that like someone that he really respects.
Yeah. So, like, I just think like JB will always be the scapegoat when the team isn't doing well. And I just think people really need to understand what culturally it takes to build a cohesive defense in a team that historically, and most young teams do, wilt in against a game like the Raptors. You know, you got one game at home, and then you go.
The Cavs fold that game 9 times out of 10 in the past, right? Like even in the LeBron era, like we would give up those type of games, right? Like the regular season was not always enjoyable in the LeBron era, right? Like that was a team that, I mean, hey, look how we embraced flip the switch. There was a reason for that, because that switch was off on many nights. Yeah,
and the last thing I'll say on JB is a lot of people in Indiana were sick of Nate McMillan getting them to the playoffs every year, and no matter who was hurt, no matter what was going on, they were still pretty dang good. And then they nitpicked a lot of the details, and then they go get this offensive savant head coach that, oh, this guy, you know, built Nick Nurse's offense. Then he got there and everyone hated him, and he was fired within a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I just want to remind Cavs fans, like, count your blessings with a coach who has buy-in and sets a good tone culturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you look both ends of the floor, especially with the strength of schedule. It has been really, really impressive, and it's clear that they're getting buy-in. And when we point out like areas for improvement and pick nits with either the players or the coaches, like that's because we're at a stage where we are still really relying on internal development and growth, right? Like this isn't a situation where these guys are all finished products and flaws in the roster require you making a trade or adding someone. Yes, that can help, but at the end of the day, like a lot of this is going to come from internal growth, both from the players and the coaching staff, right? Like these guys are going to have good and bad games, and like that's the type of stuff that made me fall in love with basketball in the first place, right? Was teams looking to overcome the hump. Like how many teams would run back the same roster year after year? They would run into a hurdle, a wall in the playoffs, a team that they couldn't beat, and they just found ways to improve their own games, to work towards it. Like this is old school NBA stuff that we're seeing seeing right now. And you're seeing a roster that's really bought in, that's willing to sacrifice. Colin Sexton's made a ton of sacrifices. Darius Garland has had to learn how to play off ball. His usage has dropped from last season. Everyone's looking to adjust to new roles, and they're just bought in because at the end of the day, these are guys that really care about winning. And that was something that we were told when these guys were drafted, when they were brought in, like
just basketball guys.
Garland, Okoro, Sexton, Allen, all Team USA guys with real great work ethics. Like that was the book on those guys. And we're seeing that now. So this is a really fun spot to be in. And I think it's important to point out that when we are pointing out kind of flaws and areas for improvement, it's to identify where those areas for growth are, because when that growth occurs, if it does occur, we can give them their props, we can celebrate them, because right now we're in a spot where this is a ridiculously young group. Like, we talk about Mobley as a franchise centerpiece and Garland as the engine for this team. We're talking about a 21-year-old and a 20-year-old. That is absurd. We are in such a great spot right now, and I'm excited for this ride. Like, I'm excited for the lulls that come this season. I'm excited for the highs.
I'm not excited for the lulls. Keep the highs going, please. Thank you. If I can tease one of the members of our chat right now, Alex Story in the chat, who clearly isn't a big JB fan, criticizing the offense, wants Mark Jackson, the only man who could hold Steph Curry back offensively. No, thank you. I don't know, man. I was on Across the Cavs with Zach Weiss, which is another great Cavaliers podcast this week. And Zach asked me kind of what my biggest disappointment was from the season. And, obviously there's some things to pick at, like, I'm disappointed Colin isn't shooting well, but like, I wouldn't call that a disappointment because I know how basketball works, like, not to like toot my own horn, but I know that sometimes shots don't go in and players slump. And I really kind of struggled to find one. I think the biggest disappointment I had was like that I felt like Darius hadn't like completely made the leap yet. Like, and if that's my biggest disappointment for the year, that means we're having a great year. So I know that it's basketball fans and it's Cavs fans, but I just got to implore everyone, like, you need to be having a little more fun right now. Like, this is insane that they're 6-4 against this schedule. We thought that if they were going to find their way anywhere near 500 ball, it would be after they got their asses kicked for the first like month of the year and then clawed their way back. This was not something either of us foresaw. So I just want to kind of reiterate to the Cavs fan base, like, let's nitpick later. Like, let's be bummed out and try to cut Colin and get a new coach. Like, if you want to do that later, because right now they're winning games they shouldn't win by conventional wisdom. They haven't been favored a single game this season, Justin. The
7-3 against the spread, baby.
The smallest line they faced is +5.
That's unbelievable.
So like, this is a team that is bucking conventional wisdom, running some weird stuff, and it's working. And it feels like they have an identity. So yes, it's going to get less fun. But if you're not having fun now, maybe find a new hobby, because this is the good stuff right now.
This is the good stuff, and I think a feather in JB's cap is we've seen him adjust on the fly, right? Like, I think the coaches that really struggle in today's NBA are the ones that can't adapt their systems to changes in personnel. And we saw last year when they would go no guards, like the guards were all hurt, and you would find a way to scrap out a win in Memphis with JaVale McGee basically playing at shooting guard, right? Like, we've seen him get funky and willing to try things, and all of a sudden, like, the criticism coming this year was, it's just a very bland offense. It's just high pick and roll. There's no motion. Now we're seeing lots of motion. We're seeing growth. We're seeing things added to the playbook as these players and the personnel become capable of executing that stuff. So that's really exciting. I think the growth in the guards, like we talked about, Sexton's on-ball defense, I think it's been good. I think Garland's actually really, really improved defensively. Basketball Index actually in their top 4 strength for Garland this year. Perimeter perimeter defense has moved into his top 4 strengths according to their metrics right now. So he's doing a better job there for sure.
This is a classic. Justin uses a metric he doesn't understand to support his boys.
I have no idea. I you know what? I have no idea what's going on there. But even his defensive box plus minus is good. It has much improved.
And I know a lot about
season.
that one. So yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know exactly what goes into that formula.
The ones that are out there are matching my eye test.
I saw some new stat called drip that said Evan Mobley was the 9th best defender in the league, and I'm like, sounds right to me. Retweet.
Drip sounds like a metric that was created to convince people that Westbrook is better than Rubio still.
It sounds like a metric that was created to make fun of us.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. One of these days, someone is going to create a fake metric that really puts the Cavs in a good light, and I'm just going to like shout it out on the podcast, and I'm going to have so much egg on my face. That is bound to happen at some point here.
Yeah, I'm gonna start making some up and just see if I can get you to retweet one.
You know what? It's basically like Ron Burgundy. If I see Cavs optimism, I'm going to retweet it. So there's a good chance of that. But you know what? We've got a lot to talk about moving forward. This is another exciting week of can-win games. You got the Knicks tomorrow, Wizards, Pistons, and then playing the struggling Boston Celtics twice. There's some good tests in there. Knicks and Wizards have played really well this season. Wizards are a really deep team. Pistons, I think, is our first should-win game. I think if we're not favored in that one, I want to need to talk to some Vegas odds makers there.
Yeah, I think the Pistons game is the first one where they'll be favored.
I think that's probably a safe bet, but those 2 home games against Boston, that's
maybe
really
Washington. I think they'll be favored by like 1 or 2 in Washington. I don't think Vegas likes them yet either.
That's not a bad point, but this is another exciting week, right? Like even if you drop the game against the Knicks, you have a really good opportunity to get some more wins here early in the season before the schedule really starts lightening up.
And catching Boston when they're still figuring themselves out a bit is definitely a good thing, because they are that team is kind of also built to give the Cavs problems. And if they can get them while they're in a bit of a funk, that's kind of the dream, especially on a back-to-back, knocking out 2 of those 4 games.
Ooh. Great opportunities here, Carter, and I cannot wait to break them down. I can't wait till the next Cavs game. Like I am so eager for every single Cavs game. Hopefully you guys feel the same way about this podcast. And if you are waiting for every single episode of this podcast, in the meantime, you can support us. If you're watching on YouTube, you can you can subscribe, you can click the little notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, you can do what we always ask you to do, which is leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, you can do so by sending a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there, and until next time, go Cavs.